June 23, 1942. Royal Air Force spotters at Pembrey Airfield in South Wales squinted through binoculars, tracking a sleek German fighter descending through scattered clouds. Alarm sirens should have been screaming. Anti-aircraft guns should have been training on the intruder. Yet, something about the pilot's approach seemed off. The Focke-Wulf 190 touched down smoothly on the grass runway and rolled to a stop near the control tower. The engine died. The canopy slid back, and Oberleutnant Armen Faber of Jagdgeschwader II climbed out, removed his leather helmet, and took in the unfamiliar buildings. Then a chill ran down his spine. The aircraft lined up on the flight line weren't Messerschmitts, they were Spitfires. The uniforms rushing toward him weren't Luftwaffe grey, they were RAF blue. Simultaneously, British intelligence officers across southern England realised the same shocking truth. Germany's most lethal fighter, the Focke-Wulf 190, the weapon that had been decimating Allied pilots for months, had just been delivered intact to Britain by a disoriented German pilot who thought he was landing in France. The intelligence windfall was immense. What American test pilots would later discover about this aircraft would revolutionize Allied tactics against German fighters for the remainder of the war. For 8 months, the FW-190 had been a nightmare for Allied pilots over the Channel. It first appeared over France in September 1941. From its first engagement, it was clear this was no ordinary fighter. Squadron leader J.E. Johnson, who would later become Britain's top ace, faced the FW-190 in early 1942 and barely survived. It was faster than the Spitfire Merc 5 in level flight and in dives. It could outroll any Allied fighter, and its firepower was devastating. Allied aircraft were comprehensively outclassed for the first time in the war. The statistics confirmed the terror. RAF fighter losses over France spiked dramatically in the first half of 1942. Experienced pilots who had survived the Battle of Britain were now being shot down by an aircraft they could not match. The FW-190 could dive away from Spitfires, outroll them in turning combat, and destroy them with 20mm cannon shells. American pilots arriving in Britain with P-47 Thunderbolts were warned repeatedly. Do not engage the FW-190 in turning combat. Do not try to outroll it. Do not get into a dive race. The list of what worked was frighteningly short. Intelligence desperately needed answers. What made this aircraft so effective? What were its limitations? How could Allied fighters counter it? But every FW-190 shot down over Britain had been too damaged to provide useful data until Faber's catastrophic navigation error. Oberleutnant Armen Faber, a skilled 1-year-old pilot with multiple victories and a respected member of Jagdgeschwader II, had been on a fighter sweep over the English Channel, escorting German bombers attacking the coast. The mission had gone smoothly until the return flight. Aggressive maneuvers in combat left him disoriented. Clouds obscured the coastline, and the sun gave false directional cues. Breaking through the clouds, he saw green countryside and an airfield below. Believing it was a Luftwaffe base in France, he landed unaware he was at RAF Pembrey. Combat disorientation was more common than acknowledged. High-speed maneuvers, combined with rapid changes in G-forces, could rob pilots of their spatial awareness. Faber had executed a 180 degrees turn in battle and simply did not realize it. When he landed and saw Spitfires, he tried to restart and take off, but RAF personnel surrounded him within minutes. Faber was captured, and British intelligence immediately began examining the pristine FW-190A on their runway. RAF headquarters reacted with near euphoria. Air Chief Marshal Sholto Douglas ordered the aircraft transported to the Royal Aircraft Establishment at Farnborough for detailed inspection. Within 48 hours, Britain's top aviation engineers were dissecting the FW-190. What they discovered explained Allied pilots' struggles. The FW-190 was a masterpiece of practical engineering. While the Spitfire represented elegance and aerodynamics, the FW-190 embodied raw functionality. Its BMW 801 radial engine produced 1,700 horsepower compared to the Spitfire Mark V's 1,470. But raw power was only part of the FW-190's advantage. Its most devastating feature was its roll rate. The aircraft could snap from one bank to the other faster than any Allied fighter. This seemingly minor trait proved revolutionary in combat. When a Spitfire attempted to follow an FW-190 through rolling maneuvers, it couldn't keep up. The German pilot could reverse direction, gain an angle, and line up a shot before the Allied pilot even reacted. British test pilot Captain Eric Brown flew the captured FW-190 extensively and immediately understood why Allied pilots were dying. The ailerons were light and responsive at all speeds. The aircraft could be thrown around the sky almost by thought alone. By contrast, the Spitfire required considerable muscle and finesse. The firepower advantage was equally staggering. The FW-190A3 carried two 20mm MG-151 cannons and two 7.92mm machine guns. A 2-second burst released more destructive energy than a Spitfire Mark V could generate in 10 seconds. The guns were mounted close to the fuselage, concentrating fire for maximum effect at combat ranges. Its dive performance explained why FW-190S regularly escaped. Pursuing Spitfires, the heavier frame and clean aerodynamics allowed it to outdive almost any RAF fighter. Pilots attempting to follow one in a steep dive watched helplessly as the German fighter pulled away. Yet testing also revealed weaknesses, turning this captured aircraft into a treasure trove of strategic intelligence. The radial engine, while powerful, struggled at high altitudes. Above 20,000 feet, performance dropped dramatically, with overheating and power loss becoming issues. The Spitfire's Merlin engine, designed for high-altitude operation, actually performed better as altitude increased. The FW-190's superior roll rate came at the cost of high-speed control heaviness. In dives exceeding 400 miles per hour, pilots required immense strength to recover, creating a vulnerable moment for attackers. Its weight, while advantageous in dives, reduced sustained turning performance. Allied pilots could exploit this by forcing the FW-190 into long horizontal engagements, where the advantage shifted. British intelligence immediately began distributing tactical bulletins. More importantly, they invited American test pilots to Farnborough to fly the captured FW-190. In August 1942, U.S. Army Air Forces pilots arrived and evaluated Germany's secret weapon. They returned to training bases with insights that saved hundreds of American lives. Major Cass Hoover, one of the first Americans to fly the aircraft, issued a blunt assessment. The FW-190 will beat any Allied fighter below 20,000 feet if the German pilot knows what he's doing. Our advantage is altitude. Above 25,000 feet, P-47 seconds and late-model Spitfires have the edge. Force them high, and we win. Let them dictate low-altitude combat, and we die. This intelligence fundamentally altered American fighter tactics in Europe. When P-47 Thunderbolts began operations in 1943, their doctrine emphasized high-altitude combat. Bomber escorts flew at maximum altitude. Fighter sweeps operated above 25,000 feet whenever possible. German fighters forced to follow them into thin air struggled, exposing weaknesses that American pilots exploited. The captured FW-190 also influenced aircraft design. Wright Field engineers studied its roll advantage and redesigned P-47 and P-51 ailerons for responsiveness. Its gun placement inspired concentrated weapons layouts, and even cockpit ergonomics informed American combat efficiency improvements. Perhaps the most important lesson, the FW-190 was not invincible. Understanding its limitations empowered Allied pilots. By late 1943, P-47 seconds and Spitfire Mach 9s could challenge FW-190S at high altitudes, and kill ratios began shifting in favor of the Allies. German pilots noticed the change. Oberleutnant Joseph Pips Priller commented in his journal that American pilots had clearly studied the aircraft, avoiding rolling scissors and forcing fights where German engines labored. The captured FW-190 remained at Farnborough throughout the war as a reference for evaluating new variants. When the FW-190D9 Dora appeared with an inline engine in late 1944, Allied intelligence compared it to Faber's aircraft, immediately understanding the improvements and limitations. After the war, historians calculated the enormous impact of Faber's mistake. The intelligence gained was disseminated through tactical bulletins, training films, and demonstration flights, shaping operations, development, and doctrine across Allied air forces. Captain Eric Brown later wrote, "Faber's navigation error gave us the Rosetta Stone for understanding German fighter design. Every advantage and every weakness of the FW-190 was documented. That single aircraft probably saved more Allied lives than any intelligence coup of the war." The irony was clear to German intelligence. One officer commented, "We spent months trying to capture a Spitfire intact. The British didn't have to try. We delivered our best fighter directly to them." Armen Faber spent the rest of the war as a prisoner in Canada, survived, and returned to Germany, living until 1976. Initially blamed, later assessments recognized that combat disorientation could happen to any pilot. The real question: why had German intelligence assumed the British would never get a pristine FW-190? The story of Faber's captured fighter underscores a fundamental truth about technological advantage in warfare. Germany's FW-190 had been a near-invincible weapon. Its dominance evaporated the moment Allied engineers examined it. Every aircraft design involves trade-offs. The FW-190's low-altitude supremacy came at the cost of high-altitude performance. Its roll rate came with heavy high-speed controls, and its firepower reduced sustained maneuverability. Once understood, these weaknesses were exploited. Today, the FW-190 is celebrated as a masterpiece of German engineering, displayed in aviation museums worldwide. But its reputation is inseparable from the intelligence coup that exposed its secrets. One pilot's momentary disorientation over the English Channel turned Germany's secret weapon into a tactical textbook. The FW-190 that Armen Faber accidentally delivered became the aircraft that taught the Allies how to win. The lesson endures. Superior technology matters, but superior intelligence matters more. Sometimes, the greatest victories arise not from brilliant attacks, but from a single mistake delivering exactly what your enemy needs. One landed, aircraft, one intelligence windfall, and the air war over Europe shifted forever.